This is going to be a short documentary on the Warner Brothers. Yes, the Warner Brothers, the original founders of the movie studios. Believe it or not, in 1896, they lived in Youngstown, Ohio, in the Smoky Hollow neighborhood. I'm at the intersection of Walnut Street and Rayen. There's Rayen Avenue. And as I point my camera in that direction, that is the Smoky Hollow neighborhood. I don't know exactly where the Warners lived. Because they moved to Youngstown in the Smoky Hollow neighborhood that way in 1896. But it was in this area. That's going east down Rayen Avenue. South. Downtown Youngstown is in that direction, and that's going west. So we're very near Youngstown State University, which is off in that direction. And I'm going to take you down into the Smoky Hollow area going that way. Now I'm in the neighborhood that is called Smoky Hollow. And like I said, I don't know where the Warner family, exactly where they lived, but it was somewhere very near this area. Harry, Albert, Sam, and Jack. So after the family emigrated from the country Poland, before they moved to the Youngstown, Ohio area in Smoky Hollow, they lived in Baltimore and London, Ontario. But as history shows, they eventually settled somewhere in this area. As I pan my camera around, this is the Smoky Hollow neighborhood of Youngstown, Ohio. They settled here in 1896. Sam, Harry, Albert, and Jack. Now, it was Sam who was a projectionist at a park in Youngstown called Idora Park. So this is in the early 1900s. He worked a projector, and that's how they got involved in the film industry. He bought it for $1,000, and Jack contributed. They all eventually contributed to the very early movie making industry. And the first Warner Theater is in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, which is about 15 miles from here. You got to cross into Pennsylvania, and that's where the first Warner Theater was made. And the second Warner Theater was in downtown Youngstown, Ohio. But this is an area, like I say, where they grew up. And it was a rough area. Even back in the early 1900s, in this neighborhood, there was a murder almost every Saturday when Jack and all the Warners were living here. Jack even was in a gang, briefly in a gang, at Westlake Crossing. Now that's a parking deck for Youngstown State University. And right over here is the Mahoning Valley Restaurant. This was established in 1927. So in this neighborhood, you had a mix of Jewish people, Italians, and probably German. Youngstown was a melting pot, especially for Eastern European nations. Poland, Germany, of course, Italy, Slovakia, Czechoslovakia, German. But the very early immigrants from this area were from Germany. I'm talking 1820s, 1830s. One of the oldest restaurants is the Manicure. But so here's the neighborhood as young men where the Warner brothers lived, believe it or not. And it, like I say, it was a rough area. Here's some of the older houses in the Smoky Hollow neighborhood. I'm gonna go down this street and I'm gonna show you a mural on a concrete wall, some street art that just borders the Smoky Hollow neighborhood. Here's an old brick street in Smoky Hollow, and Youngstown State bought up a lot of this property, but back in the day there were more houses. These are vacant fields. They tore down a lot of the older houses, but I'm gonna go over there and show you some more of the older houses that are still standing. Okay, I'm at the intersection of Harrison Street and Willard Street. Still in the Smoky Hollow neighborhood. And you can see these old brick roads. Those old houses made of block are still standing right here. I'm gonna go that way, and I'm still heading towards that mural that borders the Smoky Hollow neighborhood. I'm still on a street that has red brick, paved in red brick, and here's another old house. You can see the concrete steps there, so this has been there a while. And now I'm going in this direction, but I just wanted to show you these old brick roads in the Smoky Hollow neighborhood of Youngstown, Ohio, in this documentary of the founding members of the Warner Brothers, Harry, Sam, Albert, and Jack Warner. I'm at the intersection of Watt Street and Elk Street, still in the Smoky Hollow neighborhood, and I'm gonna go that way. One of the reasons they called this the Smoky Hollow neighborhood is in 1890 there was a big steel mill that produced a lot of air pollution, and a lot of times the smoke would be in this area because Briar Hill is off in that direction about a mile, maybe a mile and a half away on the west side of Youngstown. And it was the earlier, if not the first, bigger steel mill in the Youngstown area. And the blast furnaces, the production of steel really made a lot of pollution, soot, and a lot of times the soot or the smoke would be in this area, and that's why they called it the Smoky Hollow neighborhood. Here's a section of a big concrete wall that has been here a while, and it goes up pretty high. And that is one of the borders of the Smoky Hollow neighborhood. So on the other side of that wall is the Smoky Hollow neighborhood. And you can see the crack. And that's the mural that I want to show you but I'm gonna take a couple shots across the street. These old walls, and this has been here since I could remember. I lived in Youngstown 40 years of my life. These old masonry walls over here, and more older concrete walls. They have cracks in them. They've been here so long. The reason I wanted to show you this mural on that old concrete wall is because of this. And you know, there used to be a plaque on Federal Street in downtown Youngstown that mentioned the Warner Brothers, but it's not there anymore. But I just wanted to show you this mural. And like I say, on the other side of that wall is a Smoky Hollow neighborhood where the Warners grew up and lived, and actually started showing movies with a very old projector, and they used roll-up screens, and they showed movies in this area, Newcastle, and as they got bigger they actually spread out, and the first Warner Theater was in Newcastle. But you see that right there, Warner 1931, and that's the date they opened the second large Warner Theater in Youngstown, Ohio. And they used to show films in a funeral home, like a funeral parlor, in the back room of a funeral parlor in Newcastle. And one of the Cascade movie theater, or Cascade was in the title, that was one of their first movie theaters. So I wanted to show you this because I don't know why they don't have that plaque anymore. The Warner family had a butcher shop on Federal Street in downtown Youngstown, Ohio. They also sold bicycles. It was a 5 and dime store, and you could get your meat and other things, milk, in downtown Youngstown. That's how the family had first made their money. And then once the sons, Harry, Jack, Sam, Albert, started rolling with the movies, they started to make a lot of money. But here's that mural. I'm on Andrews Avenue, and as I say, beyond this wall is a Smoky Hollow neighborhood where the Warners grew up. Okay, now I'm on Federal Street in downtown Youngstown, and this used to be the second Warner Theater. And somewhere along Federal Street, the Warner family, the Jewish immigrants from the country Poland, had a butcher shop, a 5 and dime store right here on this street. And then they got in the early movie industry, with a very old mechanical projector and using roll-up screens. They started their movie industry, or their movie company, called the Warner Brothers. And the first Warner Theater that had a permanent screen was in Newcastle. But this was the second Warner Theater, and it was a big deal back in the early 1930s. Right now, it's called Idora Performing Arts, and before that, it was Edward W. Powers Auditorium. There used to be all kinds of lights up on that ceiling, and it was very lavish back in the 1930s. See right there, the Warner Theater has been placed on the National Register of Historic Places by the United States Department of the Interior. And then it became the Edward W. Powers Auditorium Symphony Center. But right there, you see that? The Warner Theater. And now I'm going to close this short documentary on the hometown roots of the Warner Brothers, the original founders of the movie studios, Warner Brothers, Larry, Albert, Sam, and Jack Warner, where it all started, right here on Federal Street in downtown Youngstown, Ohio. All right, Viking One, I hope you enjoyed this short documentary. Have a good day.